Hi, everybody. One of the things that I like to talk about, I like to practice, I like to teach is vibrato. I love vibrato, and I love all the things that we can really do about it. In fact, it is so varied, and there's so many ways to think about vibrato that one can never, ever get tired of thinking and practicing vibrato. So today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my thoughts and what I look at when I'm practicing things and how I go about adding vibrato and thinking about what kind of vibrato to use and all sorts of things. So let's get started right away. I'm going to start with a piece that I just love. It's the Symphonie concertant in E flat for violin and viola, the second movement of that. It is so beautiful. You got to listen to it if you don't know it. If you know it, you know what I'm talking about. But it's a really, really good piece to think about vibrato with. So sometimes when I'm practicing, the first thing that I'll do is to try to play the piece with no vibrato. Well, that puts a lot of pressure on my bow, and it's a great way to practice. What do I mean by putting pressure on the bow is that when I'm practicing or playing without any vibrato, it means that my bow has to be taking all of the expression. Because the left hand, although there's a certain touch that we can have, really is just kind of pushing the notes, and my right hand is doing all of the singing without any help from the vibrato. A lot of us really rely on the vibrato to kind of help us with our phrasing, but it really shouldn't be like that. The vibrato should enhance our phrasing, and the real phrasing really, really comes from how we use the bow. So let me play a little bit of that Mozart for you, the second movement of the Symphonie concertant, and then I'll talk about things that I think about and things that I'll kind of try and see how to get the piece the way I'd like it. So no vibrato. I'm going to be focusing really, really heavy on my right hand. Something like that. Now you see there was no vibrato. I'm working hard to phrase. I didn't really like everything that I did. I might play with a little bit more sound with my bow, so that would really, really help with my phrasing. So let me just try that one time. Like so. Now, a lot of times, what I'll tell my students to do is to play with no vibrato like that and try to be as expressive as possible. And then I will give myself two notes that I can vibrate on in the first phrase, for instance. So now I'm going to play, and I only am allowed two notes with vibrato. So it's very difficult because now I have to make choices, because if I vibrato on this one and this one, then I can't vibrate on the others. So I have to really, really choose carefully. So let's try that. So I chose those two. Yes, there were others that I could have done, but I wanted to see if I choose those two, what would happen. So that makes me think, what exactly does vibrato do? Vibrato enhances my phrasing. So I think of it kind of in a parallel to makeup, when the girls wear makeup. When girls wear makeup and they put it on, if they put on a whole bunch of it all over, I don't know, I don't really like that. I think that it's a little bit too much. And so it doesn't fit what I want. So the vibrato has to be placed so beautifully, and less is more. So less we do to enhance our sound, the more pure it is. And I love things that are pure, especially music like Mozart or Bach. So now I'm going to give a few notes vibrato, but I'm going to be very sparing about it and not overdo it and see what I can do. You can see that I did vibrate a bunch of the notes, but in a very subtle way. And that's kind of how I like that. Now, moving on to Bach, there are a lot of Bach pieces, and a lot of people really like to play Bach with hardly any vibrato at all. I can think of Rachel Padre. I love the way that she plays Bach, and she hardly vibrates. Remember, back in the Baroque period, the vibrato was really an ornament. So it wasn't something that was done all the time. It was there to ornament or enhance certain notes. And so when I practice Bach, of course, the first thing that I'm going to do is try to get my bow strokes in a great manner, and at the same time start thinking, I really should vibrate some of these notes. Which ones should I do, and how can I do that subtly so that it doesn't interfere with the general Baroque playing and style that I want to play with? So let's go to Bach Suite Number 2 and see what happens. Let me just play the beginning of that. It takes a lot of work to draw the bow across the string beautifully. Just by practicing without the vibrato, it helps me to learn and to feel and to get the feeling of bowing beautifully. When I bow beautifully, I feel my sound is better. When I feel that my sound is better, it helps me because I feel more confident, and then my phrasing gets better. So it's a win-win situation. Now I'm going to add a slight bit of vibrato to some of the more melodic notes in the piece and see if I can enhance those notes without interfering with the style. Like so. I like that. I love notes that don't have vibrato. I love open strings. I love notes that do have vibrato. And I love making choices to see which of those I want to use. For instance, with the piece that I just played, instead of playing the A at the beginning fingered, what if I use an open string and leave my sound a bit more open? That works beautifully, but as you notice, I can hardly vibrate on the other notes that are corresponding to that A, because if that doesn't have vibrato and I use vibratos on the others, then I don't have the consistency that I'm looking for. So again, it's these choices that we make with our vibrato that makes playing so much fun. Now, what piece should we look at next? Well, there's a piece that they're playing in Allstate in Texas this year that I love. It's the Campagnoli Etude number 9, and it starts with a really long note. And so I want to show that a little bit because there it's a really good piece to practice with no vibrato and try to phrase with the bow. There it is with no vibrato. You see how pure it is. I love that pure sound. But I think that based on the period that this is written and the fact that it's an etude about playing lyrical singing passages, we have to introduce some vibrato. So I'm going to slowly introduce the vibrato, and I'm going to start very narrow, and I'm going to get wider and wider as we go so that the sound can just open and open as we play the phrase. And that's a fun thing to do with phrases like this. Like so. So you can see that the first one with the non-vib, and then when I started to add the vibrato, that the piece starts to come alive. And really when we hear that contrast between this and then the contrast with the vibrato, when we hear the vibrato, things start opening, and my sound gets better because I have a comparison to the non-vibrato one. And then when I start adding the enhancement with the vibrato, that I know where my sound should go. What about the Schubert Arpeggione Sonata? Another piece that I think we can make sound beautiful without vibrato, and then by sparingly adding our vibrato step by step, we can really turn our phrases beautifully. So let's try that, the Schubert Arpeggione Sonata. Very hard to turn the phrase without vibrato because Schubert really is asking me to put vibrato in there. But now I'm just going to color the notes. So the vibrato isn't something that's like a mechanical thing, it's a color. So if we had like a black and white picture and we were just putting little splashes of color places, we can really make something beautiful. And that's basically what I'm doing. I'm taking the bare bones skeleton of the Schubert Arpeggione, and I'm going to start to add some vibrato and just shade in some of the notes with the vibrato. Go. I kind of like that because what I'm doing is I'm shading color in the notes. So here's the beginning with no vibrato. Now color each note. You'll notice that I vibrated on every note, but the first vibrato I did was kind of slow and wide. The second was a little faster, a little wiggle on the third finger, that one, and then full-fledged vibrato there. So that way there's a lot of variety within the first four notes. Something like this. Like so. Let's just talk about one more beautiful, beautiful piece for the viola that we can really, really use our vibrato and talk interestingly about that vibrato, and that is the Brahms Sonata No. 2 in E flat major. Why is it so exciting to talk about vibrato here? Because the piece is written for the clarinet originally, and generally the clarinet players really don't use that much vibrato. A lot of clarinet players don't use any vibrato at all. So really when Brahms wrote this, in his mind, he was hearing an instrument that, especially back then, never really used vibrato. So what can we do about that? Well, we can really work at it. And so I'm going to try that with no vibrato. it's very hard to play this without vibrato. The fact that it's very hard to do without vibrato makes it all the more great to practice like that, because now when I start to add vibrato, again, I'm going to be coloring the notes and trying to enhance my sound. Just by giving myself a little bit of makeup, I'm going to be giving myself a little bit of color at a time until I get what I want. So just a tiny bit of color on some of the notes. I'll vibrate about 3 of the notes here. Now with that thought, I'm going to add just a few more notes that have vibrato. Starting to turn into something. And now I'm going to give it just a little bit more vibrato, and I think that I'm going to have it now. It's the way that I like it. So let's try that. That's it with the Brahms E-flat Sonata. Well, I hope that this really helps you to start thinking about the vibrato, because a lot of people, when they play, it's just kind of like vibrating all the time. But I think that we lose some of that beauty and the subtle playing when we do that. So if we strip down our music a whole bunch and play with non-vibrato, and then we start adding it slowly until we get what we want, it's kind of like adding salt and spice to our food, that if we slowly do it, we never get too much. We just end up exactly how we want it. Well, I hope that this video is helpful to you, and until I see you the next time, happy practicing.